Good evening, listeners. This is 293 KFM. This is Timothy Kaligira this evening hosting the usual Friday show that wraps up and reflects on the major events of the week. Usually with the monitor they tend to be political. And somehow I don't know where the rest of the crew is, but I've been joined by Frank Mujimba, commentator and now regular panelist on this show. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you.
How's the week news-wise? Don't say it was okay, but meaning now.
I think the week has been fine. Of course, it is the same scenes. I think from last week, also feeding from the time when we had the State of the Nation address. It has been corruption that has been flying around. Arrest of big officials and also attempts that have been taken by Museveni and his government to try and fight corruption. And I think basically that's what has been going on, but also maybe across borders what is happening I think in Kenya, and I think we shall get into that. Which
is what we're going to start with actually. Dramatic news yesterday out of Kenya. President William Ruto fires his entire cabinet and leaves only the vice president and foreign minister and the vice president or the deputy president, as they call it in Kenya, more because of the alliance in which they have built. Otherwise, had it been the Museveni kind of a vice president who's handpicked by the president, he'd have fired everyone. And the reasons he gives are vague, but I am not sure it was a wise decision. The impression we get is, I've listened to the people and I'm firing this company, but there's no connection.
Honestly, I really would want to agree with you, because I think I listened to his about 12-minute speech that he gave as he was firing or dismissing the cabinet secretaries. And first of all, he comes and states all the achievements that his government, I think coming to 2 years now, about 20 months into government, he gives the achievements that they have actually garnered. He states how they have managed to fight to maintain inflation at about 4.5, a rate of 4.5. He talks about how they have managed to secure, I think, a fund for the hustlers, how they have improved the education system. So he talks about achievements that he has garnered during his tenure in government with his cabinet, and then fine, he does not say any negative thing that the cabinet has done. He is the head of cabinet of that cabinet. Whatever wrong thing that they have, whatever sin they have committed, if it is corruption, if it is bad policies that they have passed, he has been at the helm of that cabinet. So I really wonder why he had to...
But his listing achievement, you know, it's like Yoweri Museveni comes to Kampala January 26, 1986. Then his first address to the nation, 3 days later, says we did this, we fought, we took over power, we moved, etc. We've done all these achievements, so I'm now firing the entire Saleh, Jema, all those Tumukunde has fired. So it's like, but I thought the point is you go ahead with them. That's what's interesting. So it makes me wonder, I just don't know what you think. Was he would present himself as a technocratic president all through from his campaigns? Everything was, I'm going to be an economic management president, hustler fund, constantly all through from August 2022 to the time he was sworn in September. Everything since September 2022 has been about the economy and, most importantly, keeping the debt down. Why do you fire your team if you know Kenya's politics? Every politician in Kenya brings with him a whole county, sub-county, tribe, exactly where he's coming from. Then the impression is he wants to form a government of national unity. So now you're taking us back to the Mwai Kibaki era, 2005 essentially, and the only answer to that can be bring in a Raila Odinga. I don't know who else you bring. But anyway, what's your thought about this?
Okay,
was it a risk?
For starters, honestly, I did not understand what Ruto was actually meaning, because this came through because of the tax bill that had come through, and the Gen Z or the youth in Kenya were protesting against the rise of taxes that were consequently leading to the rise of prices of goods and services that they could, in other words, they could not be able to obtain or purchase these goods and services because of the high prices, and this was the deal. So for me, for starters, I think when he withdrew that financial bill, I think that was really enough. That would have been enough. But now he goes ahead to fire a cabinet. This, by the way, because what is coming through is that Ruto is trying to fight corruption, yes. And this cabinet is made up of about 24 members. Eh? This is a very small number. It is not so. Even if you fired them, I don't think it would have a significant impact on the economy of Kenya. Even if you said that you're fighting
what you call the public administration,
what you would call, maybe if he says, maybe if he is saying,
compared to a country like Kenya,
maybe if he's saying that this is one of the things that he's going to do, maybe in the coming days we shall see him dissolve maybe parliament and doing some changes that would bring a significant impact onto the economy of the people of Kenya. Otherwise, I really don't see why he would have to come in and fire such a small number of people. Yes, you're saying that because you're saying that he would want to form a government of national unity. Yes, I think that would be fine. But is it the cause as to why the people were exactly. protesting? People were protesting because of the prices of goods and services.
Okay, to broaden into actually, the argument is the immediate trigger of the demonstrations was what you say, the Finance Bill 2024. But there's a plus. The general picture of where he is struggling, suffering, you people are buying expensive cars every day. That might be some of the justification for firing them. The only problem, okay, it's one of these cases of good intentions, but you wonder about the outcome. Because as we know, Kenya's politics, it's not the kind of government that usually is formed by, people with master's degrees and who come in by virtue of that. They come and represent tribal factions much more than even in Uganda. In Uganda, it's kind of subtle. You have this minister who that's going to appease the Muslims, that will appease Buganda Catholics and whatnot. In Kenya, it is that way. It is all out, open. That's the basis of negotiation. So when you fire this cabinet, you are antagonizing the regions from which those people come, and of course the risk then is that there's going to be all this resistance. As you can create a secondary political instability and resistance to you that then has you fighting all these political fires and you can't do anything. Because then if you have a government national unity, where will the new ministers come from?
Definitely.
They must come from the very way you chose ministers from those what they call the communities and tribes and regions in Kenya.
It is the same way.
People, yes. If you fire, let's say in Uganda, just take an example. You fire
maybe the Prime Minister,
who is Nabanja,
Honorable Nabanja.
And what's the argument? Took representation. Okay, let's say Matia Kasaiji.
Okay.
He's a Munyoro, represents Munyoro, have him there. Moses Ali represents West Nile. You fire the entire cabinet, now you have a government national unity. But in Uganda or Kenya, if you have a new government national unity, where will the other? It will be the same.
It will be the same
prominent people.
Yeah. Just to follow up with that, I think the option of firing cabinet secretaries was not, because at the end of the day you're going to bring in new people, like you are saying. So I would prefer you if you would put up measures that would end corruption. In government, or in what you would call
like what if no more foreign travel.
Definitely. Yes, because actually he had come out to state that he had stopped, or I think, procurement of government vehicles. He had stopped the traveling of government officials, apart from the essential activities. Those are the ones that were going to continue, but all the other activities were going to be halted. I think that was really enough as opposed to continuing, and then because even if you bring in new people, they can also, you see, I would not think that, Tim, maybe let me use you as an example. I would not think that you, by saying that you are not corrupt, I wouldn't take that for it. I would wait for you until when you get into a position of power that actually exposes you to this risk, that you would then test that would test how firm you are in terms of fighting corruption. So the new he's going to bring in what you would call the government of national unity. But these are this. But of course, this is the trend that is going on. When you look at what is happening in South Africa, look at what is happening in India after 2 terms. Is it called PJB? They have failed to secure the outright majority. Look at what is happening in France. So I think that is maybe the way to go.
The winner take all.
Yes. I think it's not something that is really working out. So I think it's the way to go. Government of national unity. If you could form that and then Kenya is at peace, then I think that is okay. But that does not fight corruption.
Although there might be a point, now to mention this, it could be some of the logic of the 1979 UNLF government or the broad-based government of 1986. When you have these shaky societies and you've seen a glimpse of street protest and street anger, which reminds him, of course, of the post-election violence of 2007-2008 in Kenya. And that general unrest, Kenya bases peaceful country, but it's always just one mistake away from going up in flames. So I think he might have said, okay, it's like if the rumors we hear are true, there seem to be forces even within his own government fighting him. So I think what he decided to do was to do more like 86. You have won the military victory, but you don't have political legitimacy, and calming the country down politically is easier. So in other words, if you remember the last election was one of these near really
200, about 200,000
yes.
votes.
It was one of those, okay, to put it crudely, it was more like 53, 47, that type of close, a very large, bitter, losing minority. So I think he must have worked out, okay, to cool all this anger, which nothing can be done.
But also, Timothy, I would want to hear what you think about this. That Ruto, that what is happening. Ruto is not having has failed to get support to all the other stakeholders. Apart, he's now coming to the population. He's trying to appease the population. You remember, for you to I think to form a government, you must have, for example, let's say Uhuru Kenyatta was backing him and all the other families that have been in power backing him. So I think he has failed to win that, and then now he's leaning more to the population. So whatever the population is asking for, he's trying to provide to try and appease them so that they can keep him in power. But also, I find it really dangerous. A few years ago, the same situation happened in Sudan, and this is where you had skyrocketing prices of bread, and this sparked off protest that even led to the fall of the government of Bashir. But I can assure you that today, the people of Sudan would want Bashir. If they had an opportunity, the Bashir would come back, because now they did not have bread then, but now they have nowhere to stay. So the people in Kenya, I really don't think that, maybe they are taking this for granted. They think that because they have been running through a democracy, they think nothing can change. But the army is always watching this, and they are seeing what is happening. So what if tomorrow the army took over, and maybe there are factions in Kenya that are fighting, and these people have nowhere to...
I don't know if you saw my tweet late last month when I said if Kenya isn't careful, it can go the Sudan way.
Definitely, they can.
Let's go into a break now. We're joined by some latecomer. Not surprising, for the institution from which he comes. Everything is done late. No, not busy, just disorganized. Joseph Sabiti who works at Parliament, and in typical parliamentary style is late and incompetent. But let's take a break and come back. Welcome. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, listening in, including somebody, a listener somewhere in the industrial area. Thank you for the message, Frank Mujimba, and just joined, as I said, by the latecomer from I think when the year ends and we're thinking about what is the worst performing station in Uganda, I'm sure we know which Uganda we say. But anyway, so just welcome.
Thank you,
the last I heard of you 2 weeks ago, you have a strong feel for the pulse of Kenya. So tell us, what's going on in Kenya? Mwai Kibaki, as you said, also fired his cabinet after the referendum.
Yes, 2005,
Yes.
when he lost the referendum to the Raila Odinga army. He fired the entire cabinet except Vice President Modi Awori, and for about 3 weeks the PSs ran government, and I was saying somewhere in the morning that Kenya did not die. The difference is that I think then there was a seasoned civil service that has experience, that had transcended, groomed through the Moi administration with all its problems and everything, but at least they knew how to keep a stable state. When William Ruto took over, I think because of the way he was treated by President Kenyatta, he literally dismembered the civil service, dismembered the intelligence services, dismembered the command and control of the army and the Kenya National Police. I want to see how he's going to pull off this magic. He's trying to be American in a crooked Kenyan society.
Or let me say, to give Uganda some context, he's being President Godfrey Binaisa in 1980.
Yes.
Fire this
This one is also fired.
No, fire Museveni and fire David Oyeto, transfer him to Algeria.
Yes.
Essentially fire the basis of the
Literally fire the state. So you have fired, let's even look at the fired individuals. You have fired Moses Kuria, you have fired Moses Kuria and the Mount Kenya, clique, you fired them. You fired the tribal kingpins of the community that supported you the most, Mount Kenya, because of their traditional inherent hatred for Raila Odinga and the Raila phobia. So you fire your right-hand man, Onesmus Kipchumba Murkomen, who basically, when you say Murkomen, you see Ruto. So if he has made a mistake, literally,
Ruto also made a mistake.
So then there's the historical tribal government formation policy in Kenya, where it is Mount Kenya and Rift Valley and all this. So if you're going to pick ministers, then you might still have to go back to these tribal enclaves. So you go back to the future. Literally nothing has been done. Yes. Then you fire I've seen the police chief has resigned. Yes, the deputy has been transferred to civil service. So there's new command again in police in a fluid situation where this young Gen Zs are all over the place. Remember, the demand was fire your cabinet, fire the IGP, fire all these people, and then it came to Ruto must go. So the rest have gone. It is now Ruto left to go. So I think he has made too many concessions, and it's going to come back to pitch.
Frank made that point just before he came in. It's trying to be too. These Kenyans have this wannabe thing. The way even the way they create this Senate, trying to irritate the Americans, and Uhuru Kenyatta wearing the uniform, and I think they are trying to. This person don't take everything you see on Netflix to heart, and I think Ruto is trying to be too much for that American Kennedy sort of president. You might basically be cutting off your legs of power. But anyway, all going forward, that's an important country. As for anybody who's listening who's young, why is Kenya important in East Africa? I'll start with you, Joseph, and then go to Franco. Why should we be discussing Kenya? Why is it important? I'll give you my views.
I think that because of our landlocked nature, the economic routing, drawing back from the 2007 experience when our export and import routing was interrupted, that's Uganda will feel the pinch in terms of the economic trajectories and all that. In terms of politics, President Yoweri Museveni stands above all these guys, whether Ruto and his American suit and his handshake with President Biden, especially considering that he failed to even manage Gen Zs in his own country. I think that Uganda is a stronger state. Well, team, you will say strength relying on one person's charisma and abilities, but who
is around the same age as some American president who is
well, at least he has not yet demonstrated signs of what the American president has demonstrated. But the point is that I think that the economic interlink between Uganda and Kenya will be our greatest loss if that country goes up flames.
Okay, Frank, I'll give my own views.
Yes.
Okay. Why should a Ugandan care this? Why should we spend half an hour on KFM?
Definitely, it is economics, like Sabit said, in terms of not even being a transit route for our imports from the outside world, but also I think we do a lot of business with Kenya. I think you remember when they had during the leadership of Kenyatta. You remember when they had stopped, I think, eggs from getting into that country, when they had stopped maize from going there. We almost had a crisis here. So, but this was later on solved, and I think by President Museveni had to travel to Kenya, and this was sorted by Kenya. So it is basically trade that people can produce from Uganda, then they're able to export goods to Kenya. So majorly it is about trade, market, and economics. I don't think there is any other thing that we would import from Kenya to Uganda.
Okay, well then I better inform you and the listeners. So this is Kenya. Kenya is the 7th largest economy in Africa. That's statistic number 1. Statistic number 2, it's the largest non-mineral, non-metals economy in Africa. And as if you remove the African economy is not dependent on oil like the Algerias, the Libyas, and that sort of thing, Nigeria, South Africa with its precious metals, gold. Kenya is the largest agriculture-first economy in Africa. The 6 that are bigger than it are mainly that petroleum, mineral-based. Then, this port here in Mombasa is the 2nd busiest in Africa. I don't know if it's after the one in Durban or the one in Morocco, but I think Durban might be number 1, but Mombasa is the 2nd busiest port in Africa. It, as you say, it basically is the entry point for these landlocked countries, Uganda, part of Tanzania, northwestern Tanzania, Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan. What happens to Kenya? The last time, as Joseph was saying, after that election crisis, fuel went from some 3,000 something shillings, 2,000, to in Western Uganda it was 14,000 shillings a litre. Here to I think Kampala it was 11,000. It came to a standstill. 1976, when President Idi Amin threatened to take over Western Kenya, claiming it was originally part of Uganda. After the Israeli attack, Kenya, the border was closed and there was no fuel in Uganda. You might have seen photos of Amin riding a bicycle. That was the time. So Kenya is, literally speaking, if it shuts down Uganda and much of inland, Central and East Africa shut down. Kenya is also the home to most of these international news organizations. Yes. China's BBC office here, CGTN office in Nairobi, most of these Reuters, the BBCs and whatnot. Kenya is also a hub, but don't say I said it on this is off air. It's a hub of many of these Western intelligence services. The CIA is they have a military base from the British and whatnot. This is really a hub. Yes. It's a hub of Western intelligence in the region. But this I said off air. Then also, it's of course this Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is I think 6th busiest in Africa. It's the busiest in this whole region here. Its newspapers, even at the height of print, these daily nations and others, if you remove the South African newspapers and some in Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, the best-selling newspapers in Kenya, the Standards, the Nations, are among the biggest selling papers. Kenya is one of the most urbanized societies in Africa. Then these undersea cables, the internet cables, the Seacoms, those that neighbors they are offshore in Mombasa.
Actually, network was off when protests were going on.
Exactly. So when you're saying, when you talk about, so now I'm trying to give you a background. Kenya is sort of in computer terms, it's like the server. Yes, there's this build computers. It's the server where the room that's always kept air conditioned, cold. That Kenya is the server of the East African region. It really is that important. That's why President Museveni, the UN Secretary General then, Kofi Annan, all this moved in. The consequences were that serious, that level of destabilization. So I've given you people some geography, North America geography.
There's also been conversation about the physical proximity, the possibility of the young people here doing what the Gen Zs are doing in Kenya. I've found it very hard. But first, I think that to reach where they are, the critical mass in Kenya is quite. They have
what
generated
critical mass.
citizens who would wake up and say, look, team is playing with our right and this and resolve to take action. I don't mean social media action where you threaten and then threaten big, but that happens. So I think that there are lots of lessons for the security forces here. I don't think our command and control is...
Maybe drills are going on somewhere.
But these pictures we saw, but the trouble is that Ugandans, it's not that Ugandans are afraid, just that, those pictures show these Kenyan girls come, jeans.
Dancing in front of police officers, yes.
Some boy urinating in the police truck. The other guy jumps in the truck.
On top of the police truck and
live streaming. Well, in other words, you must, if there's any demonstration of Kenya as a country so different from Uganda, it's that withdrawing everybody in the region just watched and said.
But isn't that one side of it? Because I have a list of missing persons. There are people being kidnapped. There are people who have... Yes. I think
kidnapped because of what they say against...
Because of the protests.
Because of the protests. So
yes.
That's
in Kenya? Yes. Oh. There are arrests ongoing. So I think that they have done well in the public relations bit, but there are... Yes.
So going back to the days of Nyayo House...
Absolutely. Because you remember President Ruto's first speech after Parliament overran. And I don't know how. There's one standing man, I think, who is going to fall. That's the Speaker of the National Assembly. I don't see how... I don't see how... I don't think Moses Wetangula is going to survive this purge. Everybody has gone. He convened a house in the middle of a heated country where everything was... The signs were clear. And so I don't know. I don't see him. I'm shocked that there's no sound of an impeachment motion yet. But again, Tim, when Kenya burnt in 2007, they formed what they call the Grand Coalition government with Kibaki as president and Raila Odinga as executive prime minister. Sort of, what problems did it solve in Kenya?
Of course, long story, but then, well, yes, I agree with you.
So when all this is done, when the demonstrations are done, the dead people are buried, the kidnapped ones are probably processed in court and everything, I still want to see what type of cabinet, for example, Ruto is going to form and how it will transform that country and address the issues. The country came close to, failing in its debt obligations. The economy is not doing very well. So I don't see the magic that Ruto is going to do.
Well, we can pick up on not so much. We've done enough of Kenya. Let's get back to Uganda after the break. This is 933 KFM. That is Joseph Sabiti. Sitting opposite me is Frank Majimba. 2 minutes, we'll be back. So welcome back to the second half of this show. This is Timothy Kaligira hosting the Friday show with Frank Majimba sitting opposite me. To my right is Frank Sabiti. And next topic is going to be what seems like a worrying recent development. It began about 8 years ago and we took it somewhat lightly, but now it seems to be a new momentum behind it. This idea of people who annoy the president or insult him get arrested. In the earlier years, you might remember it was Stella Nyanzi's 2016, 2017. Then a little more recently, 4 years ago, it's Kakwenza Rukira Bashaija, who's now in Europe. And then now the latest, of course, is some young TikToker who mocks the president, is in jail for 6 years. Anderson Borora, former RSSU of Ruwaga, also jailed, but he, in his case, it's basically this thing about annoying the government, and there's something about the speaker. Not so. Am I misrepresenting the facts? People have gone to jail now because of insulting the speaker. So I'm just asking, we can deal with incompetence, potholes, irregular power, the disorganization that is NRM Uganda. But for many Ugandans, most Ugandans, there's still this little thing somewhat akin to Kenya. Kenya's difference is we can go to the streets, kiss the SFCs near, Kenyatta Avenue in Nairobi, and they just look at us. Ours is don't go to the streets. If you go there, they shoot you dead. But if you don't, then you can make noise on social media. It's okay. When we start seeing people getting arrested for what is crudely put as annoying the president, are we not crossing a certain boundary that had for the time being in safe territory, Frank?
Okay. Develop. You can tag this with maybe the development of technology and digitalization of things. TikTok is here. You can get your phone and do whatever you would feel you want to do. But I think, Tim, it is a little bit different. Yes, you can get onto your phone or hear on radio and you criticize, let's say, President Museveni or the speaker about what he or she has done. But there's what you would call, okay, you can give an opinion. It could be negative about someone. But I think what is happening on TikTok, I don't know if you sometimes pass by and see what is happening there. It's like maybe this.
I am opposed to TikTok in principle, not for I'll explain later.
Okay, so it's like the young people there are really getting it wrong when they get it onto social media. I don't know if they are really funded by someone or it's the ideas that are generated by themselves. But you find someone on TikTok and is literally abusing. You see, Tim, if I came here, instead of arguing you out, I start abusing you, I start describing you how you look like. So maybe for you, Tim, because maybe you don't have power or you cannot do anything, you might not do anything to me. But for someone who has power, and honestly, I also regarding this TikToker that you are talking about, I really don't think
Edward,
yes, I really don't think that it is the president who ordered for the arrest of this young man. So it could be maybe the security forces or someone who feels that the president would be offended if he had seen this, or even the speaker. If the speaker saw this, he or she would be annoyed, and these people are trying to do cleanup. But actually, the principal person does not know about this. So I assume that maybe that TikToker wrote something and it was picked up maybe by security forces or whoever seems to be caring so much about President Museveni, and that's how maybe this boy got affected. But I think it is also trying. Though the punishment was really harsh, 6 years in prison, I think that was really harsh. I think some of these young people, it's a matter of sitting them down and talking to them and rehabilitating them. So I think 6 years was too much. But maybe the judge or whoever it was trying to demonstrate to all these other people who use social media, instead of you getting onto social media and clearly stating your points as to why you disagree with maybe the speaker, then you turn abusive. You start calling this person a thug. You start calling this person without even evidence. This person has not been convicted, or a court has not decided the case, but you're calling this person a thief. So I think that is what maybe the judge was trying to cure. In other words, to prevent other people from doing the same.
Let's see, Joseph.
Tim, technology has grown fast, and it has come with its opportunities and challenges. I tried to listen to. I didn't know about the gentleman Edward until his conviction in court, and I went and tried and listened to the things he was saying about the president, the first lady, and General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. I think in principle I disagree with that approach to using social media. But also, Tim, the 10th Parliament passed something called the Computer Misuse Act.
Yes.
And there's a law. It doesn't even need the president or the speaker to initiate processes against you. Timothy Kalejera can say, go and make a complaint. All the police needs is a complainant, and then it will be Uganda versus Timothy Kalejera and things like that. Now, for me, the most bizarre was the leader of opposition going to court for defamation. So we thought it was a government affair. Then in comes the government in waiting, suing a former colleague they worked together at NTV for defaming him, and Joel's career has been entirely built on defaming others. The political party operates on, if they don't agree with Tim, they must abuse you, abuse your family, and things like that. So for me, I think yesterday I was on a space with the Agora team, and they had published a list that they say.
For those who don't know, Spaces, Twitters,
yes.
live.
So they had published a list that these are about 11 people, that these are victims of the speaker. And I said, look, Agatha, you're a senior journalist. Let's first do a fact check on this list. They say the first victim was Persis Namuganza. There were over 230 signatures for that censure. It is an among problem. There's a lady called Akol who after wanted to contest, then went to ran into court with one of her voters. The case went up to the Supreme Court. She lost at the Supreme Court. She has costs to pay. Has been added to the list. There's a councillor, a NUP councillor, who was arrested before the general elections and was elected while in prison, has been added to that. There's another one they said is Moses Mugarura. Now, Moses Mugarura is a journalist. I have talked to him frequently for the last 8 or 9 months. And I called him and said, Moses, when did we again kidnap you? He was Angazi. They put Jude Bukenya. Now, Jude Bukenya was arrested. And I don't know if you followed the case of one Ruto. There's a gentleman called Ruto who sued the speaker for, yes, and actually the case was dismissed. He had established a sort of team on Kampala Road. Their job is to sit and blackmail. So when Jude was arrested, I got a phone call from very many editors, especially including there's a gentleman called William Scato from NTV. The editorial team here called and said, look, we are not saying he's a clean guy, but we are saying as a journalist, please make sure he gets out. Let us deal with him professionally. I initiated the conversation that led to the release of Jude Bukenya. So and for me that is bad, because when tomorrow Timothy is tortured for real, then it becomes very hard to have that conversation. But you see also, so we have that law, the Computer Misuse Act. A section of it, I think, was nullified earlier this year. I think that law, if we want to deal with the question of freedoms and what we need, we must deal with that and make sure that something is done. But also, I think that all leaders, including my boss, need a thick skin.
So that means even if I'm the one who, as small as I am, even if I am abused, maybe using social media or
yes,
I can go to court. And
you can go to court, but also there's the civil route, which the leader of opposition has taken, but there's also criminal proceedings, which is the criminal offenses are against the state. So all the police needs to kickstart a conversation is a complainant. But also some of these names being mentioned as victims are very interesting characters. Tim, I used to think that as a journalist I was very informed about what happens in this town, but now I sit in a place where you look at people being praised by the out there, and I said, this one is a fighter. The last conversation I had with Anderson Burora, I've not said this anywhere, was through a journalist's phone.
Actually, that's what I wanted you to speak to.
Yes, a journalist at NBS called me, a colleague, and said, I have someone here on the phone and they want to talk to the speaker. So I said, now that gentleman has met very many people, and said, you see,
that is after his
no, before his arrest, he had met very many people and met people around the speaker, and they have asked what's the problem. He and if you listen to the demands he makes, sometimes you protect people's integrity, and I think that I would want to have this conversation when he's seated there, and so that he can respond, because it would be unfair discussing when he's jailed. So the last time he called a journalist, and on my phone said he wants to talk to the speaker. So I told this journalist, you're a colleague, you know how I work. If this guy thinks that his problem is talking to the speaker, put him in your vehicle, drive him to this place. I'm going to make sure they have a one-on-one, and so, because his most frequent complaint has been that we, the team, had blocked him from accessing the speaker. Yes. So many times this fight against corruption and what, it starts with an untold story. Not to say that there are no victims. Definitely. Our security forces have done some bad things in this town. There's another gentleman who came on the space called Nwagaba Stephen. The last time he called me was on June 8th. I think I still have it here. At 9:26 p.m. and he came to me saying, look, there's a security officer who is pushing me to blackmail the speaker. He wants that's the last time he called. And before that, and he had been brought to me by a friend. He shared a lot of information, and most of it was about his private life. Right? I have that information somewhere on my phone. Yesterday he showed up on a space and said he's a victim. I said, guy, I have been with you in my office 3 times. He spoke. I felt touched by his story. It's not that he doesn't have a story, but the story is not among. The story is his interaction with a certain gentleman whose name I want to protect now from intelligence. And so I took him to the parliamentary police and said, this guy is a victim. Is there a way you can help him? He recorded a statement as a victim. Yesterday he showed up as now. We need to separate, because the question of torture is the question of dignity, of dealing with someone, torturing Timothy destroys him for the rest of his life. I don't want Frank Mujimba because he wants to trend or something to associate himself with that. So, but the point is that I, as a journalist, I covered the Computer Misuse Act. I don't agree with it. Even the amendments that were made, my personal view is that I do not agree with it.
Let's go into a break now, and this is an interesting topic. Now, this I'm sure has people really listening keen. Anything called human rights, state house arrest, or so on. So we'll be back after the break and complete that discussion. Come back to the last segment, and arguably I think one of the most important segments, especially toward the last quarter. We were developing this interesting point, the intersection between people criticizing, speaking out against people in power. Joseph, you made a very
legitimate calling out of leaders.
There's a little point you made you should develop it in a future show. If you're in public office, you just need to develop a thick skin, separate from all these laws and all that. And my personal view about all this has been, given where we are in Uganda, there's so little space for the downtrodden in any way. When you lose an election, it is NRM gains everything, NUP, FDC lose everything. It is so tilted toward the state in resources, access and whatnot, that the only little remaining place is not even what you'd call mainstream media in Uganda. What's left now is online media, social media, where there's no gatekeeper, there's no common sense. It's crazy. I wanted to write something about that in the Sunday morning. I don't know what happened to me, but my idea was that, to me, the fact that they can even insult me, including I'm speaking here, insult everybody from the Kabaka to the Archbishop to Museveni to the First Lady, whoever, is of course irritating from the point of view of a decent person. But to me, it's not so much the justification, not so much what they say, but the ability to say it. The ultimate counterweight to people in power in Uganda can only come from a crude side of it. I can say anything in whatever language, and you can't stop me. Then I don't know. It's a tricky thing, because the impression I get now is also that some of these people who posture as human rights activists and investigative journalists are also, there's a lot of extortion to some degree. Then also, even if, let's say, senior government official, just expresses a view, like, was it, what does it matter in the cathedral? Who will read me of this? I express some irritation, and then some people go, there's a section of our intelligence that also operates separate from the knowledge
the mainstream, yes.
Not to defend him, of course. I can give an example which happened in the 1990s. Museveni is going to Entebbe with his convoy, his presidential convoy. At that time, the head of the PP at that time was Lieutenant Colonel Kanga Bierhanga. So they're driving, and I think somewhere along the road, some cyclist or somebody or a motorist accidentally gets into the way. I think he panics and is trying to get out, and just half gets in the presidential convoy. And well, it goes on. So the convoy is going towards Entebbe. These people here are so annoyed, the bodyguards. They switch off the communication, and then they go and basically give this turn around and give him a thorough beating, and then turn around and switch back on. So Museveni doesn't know he's going on, but some of his bodyguards have switched off the communication and they beat his. These things have happened, and they do happen, and that's, I think, the more dangerous side of it. When somebody wakes up and says, okay, this, from the point of view, Mzee doesn't know this, one get know this, but no way. I can so-and-so, Captain so-and-so, just look for this person and decide to go and essentially mete out justice on behalf
of the principal, whoever it is.
What are we going to do about that? Because the speaker is, I've hinted on Twitter, she's becoming one of the most powerful women in Uganda.
Tim, I have worked with her for the last 3 years.
What's she like? And can I abuse her right now? Can I switch the microphone?
And having covered Parliament, I think I have seen power. I saw power around John Patrick Among Mbabazi. I saw power around the Honorable Sam Kutesa. I have If you're looking for powerful people in this town, I have seen power around General Saleh. It's really known the people who really own power in this town. So I think that the speaker has been framed. There's a narrative being built around trying to create the impression that she's so powerful that if you don't act on her now, she's going to supersede you. And that power is in the mind. It is imaginary.
So just a prominent, visible.
The position of the Speaker of Parliament gives you prominence and gives you the ability to I think, catapults you to a lot of scrutiny and a lot of criticism and things like that. But this is a deliberate narrative. She's too powerful. She's and I think that historically it has been easy for the system to hit anybody seen to be targeting the chair. So what do? Profile Anita Among as looking at the throne. That will be easy. That makes it easy to trigger reactions from the other power centers. And if
the army commander Idi Amin is very powerful,
you need to sack him.
When he got Singapore, leave orders to have him.
Yeah. So I have spoken to her. I have never heard her even think going beyond being Speaker of Parliament. Actually, for her, she says, I think she has reached her apex, but there's a deliberate narrative say she's too powerful, she's too wealthy, she's this and this and this. No, I say this, that one of the people, and I'm going to use a word that might sound wrong, but one of the people who are blindly loyal to the president is my boss,
the Speaker.
The Speaker. I can doubt anything about her, but the loyalty to the president is one thing I would never question. So,
I personally question, but that's
no, I don't.
That's off air.
I don't, because there are some. Let me tell you, if you're looking for real power, Tim, you have been in this town longer than me. If you're looking for the top 10 power brokers in this town, Anita Among will not feature even in the first 150, if you know the grand scheme of things. But then
actually, I would put maybe not 150.
I don't think she would make it to the top 150 list.
Let me see. I think top 20 now, as we speak, top 25.
I don't think she should make it to the top 25. In my assessment. But the thing is that the politics of the NRM is getting hot. I think because of the succession maneuvers in security, in the politics, but also the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker are seen by some of the owners of the NRM as outsiders who simply walked in yesterday, and you know there's the unwritten queue, and they distorted that status quo, and here they are. So sometimes I think that they're getting the hit for running too fast in.
I have begged to differ by just saying that. Since you say I know what goes in this town, from what I know that goes in this town, and as you say, the very powerful, but they came in almost like the way people came in from Fedemo and various people from there. Yes. But the role they played in getting in and doing things, which of course I can't say, now has transformed into a real power. There's a real need for them. Both those, the Speaker and the Deputy. So now that's why I said 125, that's a bit too low down. Maybe not top 5, but definitely top 40, I would say, for real operational reasons, for the fact that, to just give it a superficial interpretation, because we now need a third branch of state called the Parliament. Because it exists, they are essentially the gatekeepers, or at least they are really the gatekeepers. 76 the State House, but they're the people who, in a sense, help prevent this thing from getting out of hand, especially when Noop showed the power that showed. So they're not Saleh, Mbabazi, Museveni, Janet Museveni, but they are not 125, 126.
You see, for me, Tim, I think the Speaker's character is, for me, it's quite fascinating. I think she's someone who really gets who boils up so quickly, but then cools down as time goes on. So I think I've seen her in two instances. Leave alone what maybe people write about him or the narratives that are shaped by media and all that. You remember when the parliament, all of them was, when you're voting in parliament, they say nays and those who yes and then the nays. So the people, the members of parliament were saying, they were saying no, and then I think they were saying yes. Then she said the opposite of that. So then also when she had an encounter with the Deputy Attorney General, I think Kafuz, when she had to tell him, sit down, you should stop whatever you are doing. So I think she boils up, then calms down quickly, and then gets back to normal.
We don't have much time left, but in a little summary, I'll give you one of my little WikiLeaks side things. The way I've written some of these things on Twitter. I think Joseph has seen them. If you want to know the pulse of Uganda's policy and the direction, look at the speaker. She's a barometer for what's going on. She's the one person who has understood the current state of Museveni, his insecurities, his ambitions, his weaknesses, and all that. So when you see her doing things, the way she speaks, with people, please clap for the president and all that there. In fact, I believe in the Father, the Son, we believe all these things. All that she's saying, which really sounds silly for even a primary school child, what he's doing is not, it's telling you Museveni's state of mind. So if you want to know where the truth, and she's one of those people who is, you can say, maybe you could say crude enough to do that, or, you know, shameless enough or bold enough, but that bit, that emphasis, and mama here, mama, that bit, that overemphasis, is telling you all you need to know about where the Musevenis are. Now they are in that state where they really, really want to be honored. They want to feel like they are sort of mother superior, you know, king and all this, which is now why when somebody insults them on TikTok, that person has to be arrested. The Stella Nyanza Kakwenzas. It's now they are at that state of we are like elderly citizens, but now we really demand to be respected. But that's a long story for another Friday. Thank you very much for listening in, and enjoy your weekend. The K-Zone coming up after the news, and the World Cup. Europe's World Cup.
Spain, England.
You know, this England that shows an incompetent team. Gradually, you can switch me off, but off air.